in a lobster, where are we going to look? So we have a research tool to do the examination, but where are we going to find this secret? Well, we can look to the Bible, because the Bible is going to contain incredible information. We go to the book of Genesis, and we go to the story of Noah. So there's evil upon the earth. We could probably learn from this lesson today. There's evil upon the earth. God regrets creating human beings and wants to wipe everything out and start over. But he finds that Noah is righteous. And Noah is the one good man and his family on the planet. So Noah and his family are going to be saved. So we all know the story. So what's interesting here is how human lifespan changes in the Bible. As a matter of fact, there is a statistical analysis on this, which shows that if you take the ages of people in the Bible as it's represented through these generations, that it forms a statistically significant decay curve. In other words, those ages were not in the Bible as a random number. They're an accurate representation of exactly what happened. And so what can we learn from this? Well, God says to Noah, okay, now you can go and eat the flesh of animals. So presumably, before the flood, people were vegans. We're eating fruits and vegetables. But now we're going to go ahead and eat the flesh of animals, but don't eat the blood, because the life is in the blood. So what if we were to take that literally? What if there was something in blood that hadn't been discovered? We all know what blood is meant to do, but maybe there's something else there that's been overlooked. So let's take a look. For lobster blood, there's a number of different varieties. And we turn to this scientist that's an expert, Robert Baer. And he's been studying lobsters his entire life. And we had a very interesting conversation with him. And one of the things that came out of this was that lobster hemolymph was being used as a treatment for COVID-19. And lobster blood is based on copper, of course. So what's hemocyanin? Hemocyanin is a copper-containing protein. So lobsters are the Vulcans on this planet. For all you Star Trek fans. So happy we got some Star Trek fans here today. Okay. Oh, a lot of Star Trek fans, all right. So, of course, we can't help but notice that in human beings, GHK is bound to copper, and that will reset about 1/3 of the human genome to a younger state. So I think it's fair to say, would a similar mechanism be going on in lobsters? Does the copper content have anything to do with the longevity? So we could look there, and what's the connection? So we pull up this research study that's done by Professor Joseph Kunkel. That's a big lobster. I'm not sure if it's just coming out of a broiler, though. I think it's alive. I'm not sure. That would feed a lot of people. And here's what the spectrophotometry chart is going to look like on this. And I started to notice when I looked at this data that there were these peaks that were going on at 550 nanometers and 400 nanometers. So the visible spectra is between 400 and 700 nanometers. Anything under 400 is up in the UV range. Below 700 is in the infrared range. And you can see that there's these interesting effects that occur where these three different samples intersect between 700, 710 nanometers, and 525 nanometers. Okay, I know this is getting technically boring. There's a reason why we want to go through this. So a moment ago, we were talking about musical scale and 432 hertz. So we did these experiments and we showed that if we put music essentially into these electromagnetic coils, that we could accelerate the way that people healed. What does this have to do with wavelengths of light and lobster blood? Is there any possible connection? So the immediate thing that we notice is that if we start with a 432 based tuning, and then we double the number, we're going up in octaves. So here's what I did. I took 432, and you continue to double it. And you can also put this into a online calculator for converting frequency over to wavelength. So there's a number of ways to make this calculation, but basically you can convert a musical note over to a wavelength of light. So that's what I did here. And we end up with 400, when you do the calculation, you end up with 432 hertz, equal to approximately 631 nanometers. Now I'll tell you why that's interesting. It's interesting because in the scientific literature, 630 nanometer light is one of the wavelengths of light that's used to turn on mitochondrial function. And 440 hertz is not. All musical instruments should be tuned to 432 hertz because it is harmonic with the human body. It actually promotes energy and healing. Alternatively, we can use 630 nanometer light to turn on mitochondrial function. But we're still going to, if we do that, we're still going to be stimulating the outside of the body. And the patches are still superior in this sense because we can turn on specific peptides in the body that you can't with normal light. But this is a very powerful piece of information. So let's take a look at this. So we go back to our lobster data, and now we have 550 nanometers is one wavelength of light that's coming off of lobster blood. 630 nanometers, we took that number based off of 432 hertz tuning because that's what we were using in our experiments. And my hypothesis was that 630 nanometer light is in the lobster, we just didn't detect it in the lobster blood. So I had that hypothesis. And then the other wavelength of light was somewhere on the chart, would be somewhere between 700 and 709 nanometers, roughly. Those are the wavelengths we're working with. So this was my first invention that came off this process. I call it a biophotonic reflector, and ended up getting several patents on this. And if you look inside this device, you'll see that we have a series of optical filters, very high precision optical filters, along with an optical grade mirror. So essentially, we take the light, the naturally occurring biophoton emissions from the human body, they pass through the filters, hit the mirror, and then come back to the human body, but only specific wavelengths of light stimulate the surface of the skin. So that was the idea behind this. Let's see if we could treat the surface of the skin with the same wavelengths of light that are responsible for keeping lobsters young. Did that make sense? Okay, that was the objective. We got 2 to 3 years of age reversal in 10 minutes.
What?
And the way we measured this was through looking at the cell capacitance, the size of the cells. So a measure of how cells age is in their size. As we age, the cells will begin to shrink. And the electrical charge of the cell will start to become smaller. It's one of the mechanisms that's not well known about how a healthy cell goes and becomes cancerous tissue. and how ultimately cancer can be treated naturally. But that's a different subject. So we can correlate aging to the electrical charge around the cell. So when you use this device, the cells expand, the cells become younger. But it's almost too rapid. So we wanted to look for other methods here. Now let's go back to this idea that we can use technology to create new forms of matter. Maybe we could take some of those experiments that we did and apply it to this new knowledge that we have. If we were going to create new matter, what would we do? Hydrogen, as it turns out, has a metallic state. So of course we're familiar with hydrogen and water, but if we just take hydrogen, of course it's a gas, we can compress hydrogen and turn it into a liquid, and of course that's a cryogenic material. But what's not well known is that hydrogen can actually exist as a metal. So if we go back to these experiments and we say, okay, we took different types of metal. We took bismuth, copper, tin, aluminum, antimony. We put them into the presence of oxygen, exposed them to light and these electromagnetic fields, and we created new matter. What if we could take water and we could break it into hydrogen and oxygen, treat hydrogen like a metal, recombine the hydrogen and oxygen in the presence of a catalyst using a specific type of energy, and reassemble it into a new form of water that never existed before? That was the hypothesis. So if we could achieve this, what it would literally mean is that if we could do it, we could create a new type of water that had photons of light embedded into the bonds of the water, so that when you drank the water, it would release that light into the body. That was the goal. And that's how we got from where we started to where we are now in this presentation. So, I built this